President Richard Nixon invited James Brown to the White House in 1972 for what was supposed to be a friendly photo opportunity. But when the cameras turned off and they went into the private Oval Office, James said 7 words that made the Secret Service rush into the room. "You don't understand Black America at all." What happened in the next 40 minutes would remain classified for 30 years and change James Brown's life forever. June 12, 1972, Monday morning. James Brown was looking at himself in the mirror in his Washington, D.C. hotel room. He was wearing his finest suit. His tie was straight. His shoes were polished. But he felt uneasy. Today, he was meeting the president. And James knew this wasn't just a photo opportunity. James Brown was 39 years old and at the peak of his career. "Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud. Get up, I feel like being a sex machine. Super bad." Every song was a revolution. He wasn't just a musician, he was the voice of the civil rights movement. He was a symbol of black power. And that's exactly why President Nixon wanted him. The 1972 presidential election was approaching. Nixon wanted to be re-elected, but he had a problem: black voters. In 1968, he'd received only 15% of the black vote. This time, he wanted more, and for that, he needed a plan. That plan was James Brown. Nixon's campaign strategist H.R. Haldeman's logic was simple. Get the most famous black man, take pictures, have him say he supports Republicans. The black vote is ours. James saw through this game, but he still decided to go, because he had a different plan in his mind. A chance to tell the president the truth, he'd thought. Maybe he'll listen. Maybe something will change. But his assistant, Charles Bobbitt, was worried. "Mr. Brown," he'd said that morning, "this is dangerous. Nixon will make you say what they want you to say, and you'll look like their puppet." "I'm nobody's puppet," James had said. "I'm going there, but on my own terms."
At 10 a.m., a black limousine took James to the White House. Security checked him at the entrance. Very thorough. They searched everything. They examined every paper in James's bag. "What's this?" asked a Secret Service agent, pointing to a notebook in James's pocket. "I wrote down things I want to say," James said. "I'm going to talk to the president." The agent opened the notebook and scanned the pages. He frowned. "Mr. Brown, you're not here to discuss politics, just photos." "I know why I'm here," James said quietly but firmly. The agent returned the notebook but whispered something into his radio. James noticed this. He was probably being reported as suspicious activity. At 10:30, James was taken to the waiting room outside the Oval Office. Vice President Spiro Agnew was there, smiling. Campaign strategist H.R. Haldeman was there, taking notes. A few White House staffers, all white, all in suits, all looking at James strangely. "Mr. Brown," said Agnew, extending his hand, "it's wonderful to have you here. The president is very excited to see you." James shook hands, but he felt something. Fakeness. These people didn't really care about him. They saw him as a tool. "Press conference in 15 minutes, Haldeman said. "You'll come out with the president, take a few photos, then the president will make a short speech. You'll say a few sentences. We've written what you need to say." Haldeman handed James a paper. It had a written speech on it. "President Nixon cares about all Americans, regardless of race. As the black community, we can trust the president's leadership. That's why I'm calling on everyone to vote for President Nixon in this election." James looked at the paper. Then he looked at Haldeman. "I'm not reading this." Haldeman's smile froze. "I'm sorry?" "These aren't my words," James said. "If I'm going to speak, I'll speak in my own words." Agnew intervened, his voice sweet but threatening. "Mr. Brown, you came here by special invitation. The president showed you respect. You're expected to show him respect too." "I will show respect, but I won't lie." The room went ice cold.
Haldeman and Agnew exchanged glances. Then Haldeman said, "One moment," and left the room. James knew. He was reporting to the president. The black singer is causing problems. 5 minutes later, the door opened and Richard Nixon walked in. Nixon was 59 years old, medium height, slightly hunched posture, constantly sweating face, forced smile. Politics' craftiest name. They called him Tricky Dick because he always had a game. "James Brown," said Nixon, extending his hand, "the hardest working man in America. It's a real honor to meet you." James shook hands. Nixon's hand was damp and cold. "Mr. President," James said, "thank you for the invitation." "Come on, let's get the press in," Nixon said. "Let's take some beautiful photos. America needs to see a successful black leader like you." The door opened and 15 reporters and photographers entered. Flashes went off. Nixon and James stood side by side, smiling. Nixon put his hand on James's shoulder. More photos. "Mr. President, why did you invite Mr. Brown?" asked a reporter. "James Brown is a living example of the American dream," Nixon said. "He came from nothing, worked hard, and made it to the top. And now he's giving back to his community. That's what America should always be about. Race, color, religion don't matter. Anyone who works hard can succeed." The reporters took notes. Then someone turned to James. "Mr. Brown, do you support President Nixon?" "James will tell me privately. Thank you, gentlemen. That's enough." The Secret Service escorted the reporters out. The door closed. The room was again filled with just Nixon, Agnew, Haldeman, and James. "Great," said Nixon, rubbing his hands together. "Now the press conference. Are you ready, Mr. Brown?" "Mr. President," James said, "before I speak, can we talk privately?" Nixon raised his eyebrows. "Privately? Why?" "Because I have things to say, just you and me."
Haldeman immediately jumped in. "Mr. President, your schedule is very tight. The press conference is in 5 minutes." "Haldeman, give me 10 minutes," Nixon said. Then he looked at James. "All right, Mr. Brown, let's talk privately, but make it quick." Nixon led James to the inner section of the Oval Office, behind his desk. They closed the door. Only the two of them remained. "So, James," Nixon said, sitting in his chair, "what do you want to say?" James was standing. He took a deep breath. This was the moment to tell the truth. "Mr. President, I didn't come here to help you. You have no right to ask for my help." Nixon's face changed. The smile disappeared. "I'm sorry?" "You don't understand the black community. You never have. And now you're trying to collect votes by using my support. But I'm not a tool." Nixon leaned forward. His voice turned cold. "Mr. Brown, I invited you here because I respect you, but that doesn't give you the right to disrespect me." "I'm not being disrespectful. I'm telling you the truth. Your policies aren't helping black people. You're cutting poverty programs. You're reducing education budgets. You're ignoring police brutality. And then you come here and say, 'I love all Americans.' That's a lie." Nixon jumped to his feet. His face was red. "Are you calling me a liar?" "I'm telling you the truth. If you don't want to listen, that's your problem." Nixon slammed his desk. "I'm the President of the United States. Who are you to lecture me? I'm a man who couldn't find food as a child, a man who was in prison, a man who came from nothing, but a man who never lied. And right now, even if you're the president, you're doing wrong." Nixon pointed his finger at James. "Get out. Get out of here now." "I'll leave, but first, know this. The black community isn't stupid. A photo, a handshake doesn't change the facts, and you can't win their votes by using me."
James headed for the door, but Nixon said something. "You'll regret this, Mr. Brown. The IRS will audit you. The FBI will follow you. We'll examine everything about you. Those who oppose me pay the price." James stopped. He turned around. He looked at Nixon. "Mr. President," James said in a calm voice, "you can't scare me, because I've already lost everything and won it back. But you've never been a real leader, because real leaders listen to the truth. You only listen to power." James opened the door and walked out. In the waiting room outside, Haldeman, Agnew, and 3 Secret Service agents were there. When they saw James, they were shocked. "What happened?" Haldeman asked. "The president and I talked," James said. "I'm leaving now." "What about the press conference?" Agnew asked in panic. "I'm not participating. You say whatever you want." One of the Secret Service agents grabbed James' arm. "Sir, you have to wait." James pulled his arm away. "You can't hold me. I'm not under arrest here. I'm leaving." The Oval Office door opened and Nixon came out. His face was still bright red. "Let him go," Nixon said, "and this man will never set foot in the White House again. Get him out the back door. The press shouldn't see him." James was escorted by Secret Service through back hallways, past the kitchens, through the service entrance. No photos were taken. No press saw him, as if he'd never been there. His limousine was waiting. James got in and said, "Hotel." But the driver was actually a Secret Service agent, reporting every word. That afternoon, the White House press secretary made a statement. Mr. Brown's visit was brief and productive. The president congratulated Mr. Brown on his success. James Brown's name wasn't mentioned. Photos weren't released, as if the meeting never happened. But there were recordings. The Oval Office had an automatic audio recording system. It recorded all of Nixon's conversations. The conversation with James that day was also recorded. And those recordings were sealed under executive privilege. For 30 years, no one would be able to listen. But James knew, and now he was a target. 3 weeks later, the IRS began examining James's financial records under allegations of possible tax evasion. 2 months later, the FBI marked James as a possible communist sympathizer and put him under surveillance. 6 months later, several of James's concerts were mysteriously canceled. Venues cited security concerns. James understood. Nixon was taking revenge. But James didn't back down. He didn't endorse any candidate in the 1972 election. "I believe in the people, not politicians," he said. Nixon won the election, but he got 13% of the black vote, even less than in 1968. In 1974, the Watergate scandal broke. Nixon's Oval Office recordings came out. Thousands of hours of conversations, including the James Brown meeting. But that particular recording remained sealed for national security reasons. 1994, Nixon died. It was still sealed. 2002, 30 years later, the recordings were finally released. Historians, journalists, the public, everyone listened. And they heard James Brown's voice. "You don't understand Black America at all." The recordings made national headlines. "James Brown told Nixon the truth," they wrote, "and he paid the price." But James had no regrets. In 2006, a few months before his death, he was asked in an interview, "That day in 1972, could you have done it differently? Could you have cooperated without opposing Nixon?" James smiled. "No, because that day I learned that power truly fears. What they fear is ordinary people who stand up to them. I was just a singer, but that day I said no to a president. And every black child, every oppressed person should know you can say no too." James Brown's White House story is about courage. Not just courage on stage, but courage in the face of power.
James risked his career, his safety, everything, because telling the truth was more important than success.
Nixon tried to silence James, but even though he could hide the truth for 30 years, it eventually came out, because the truth always comes out, and those who tell the truth are vindicated by history. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded of the importance of speaking truth to power. Let us know in the comments, have you or someone you know ever stood up to someone powerful and told the truth? Sometimes the bravest action is saying no. James Brown did it in front of the president, and he made history. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell for more stories about the bravest moments in music history.